The Dallas Fuel may not have achieved the Overwatch League success they've wanted for the past couple of years, but whilst today many make fun of their recent failures, some forget the storied history of this organisation, Team Envy, formerly known as Team Envyus, will forever own. Today, I'll hit the rewind button to look back at perhaps their greatest accomplishment and achievement, Apex Season 1, Team Envyus' redemption when the West conquered Korea. Early 2016. Overwatch may have been a game still in beta, but that hadn't stopped a promising esports scene from developing and growing for it. Team Envyus was one of the first major organisations to sign an Overwatch team, formed around players from North America including the likes of Tailspin and Coolman. And indeed they enjoyed some success at the beginning of that year. Heading into spring of 2016 however, with Overwatch's official release just on the horizon, the team started to split apart, eventually leaving them with only 4 players on the roster. It was at this point when one of their last remaining members, Tailspin, then received an offer to go and play with a team called IDDQD. IDDQD was a team established at the beginning of that year and was making waves in this young competitive Overwatch scene by dominating the European landscape. They had even competed in some North American weekly tournaments as well, where they had actually defeated Team Envyus in a semi-final one time, en route to another triumph. IDDQD were making some team adjustments of their own at DPS heading into the spring, which is when they approached Tailspin.
He was playing for our team, approached me and said, hey, look, our team's kind of falling apart a little bit right now in the beta. I would like to maybe pursue this opportunity with the IDDQD team. And I told Ronnie, I said, well, look, I'm familiar with this team. I know what they're doing. I know how good they are. Why don't we shift and approach them about signing with the organization and keeping you on the team? They were getting offers from other organizations and I really wanted them, so I made them a good offer. And yeah, I mean, that's long story short, rest is history.
So, by mid-April, Team Envyus now had their new roster, which included their original DPS player Tailspin, but now also the former IDDQD players, Coco at Tank, Gyps Hyan at support, Internet Hulk at Flex, Harry Hook at support, and lastly, Taimu at DPS, who all moved over to North America as part of its move. It would not take long for this new roster to prove itself, as following the official launch of Overwatch on May 24th, 2016, Team Envyus quickly became known as North America's best Overwatch team, with numerous successes week after week. Their biggest success at this time being their first place finish at the OG Invitational on the 26th of June.
It is now officially over. Ladies and gentlemen, we can say it concretely now. Envyus is your grand champion of the Josh OG Invitational. Very well deserved, and what just dominance coming out from them. Yeah. They took out all the competition and they made it look easy.
This helped lay the foundations, alongside further weekly successes, for an anticipated clash a couple of months later at Gamescom's ESL Overwatch Atlantic Showdown, where the best teams from North America would go up against the best teams from Europe at a LAN event. Team Envyus came in as obvious favourites, having gone on an incredible winning run, not losing a single match since June 11th, but earned them the title of best team in the world. They convincingly topped their group, advancing them to the semi-finals on August 21st, where they would face a European side called Rogue, a promising team sure, but certainly one that wasn't perceived to be Europe's best. Despite being massive underdogs, Rogue would go on to upset Envyus 3-2 in an amazing back and forth series, which went down to the very last point on control in their 5th map decider, ending Envyus' streak that had lasted 57 matches up to that point.
They can almost turn this back around. It could be the reverse sweep here, but Vic, he's going hunting. He knows the time is lurking out towards the side. He knows that this Reaper wants to work in with the rest of Envyus to take the point. He's got to go in the point. He's got to stall it out. That's all that Envyus can do here. Rogue are holding. Timeout. Overtime ticks down. There's no chance. Surely can they trigger one more time? They can. Coco gets onto the point really quickly. There's not done yet. Put your damn headset back on, son. You got a game to play. Overtime ticks down yet again. It's it. Finally, we finally see the upset of Overwatch history.
Rogue would go on to win the Atlantic Showdown, as Envyus returned, at last defeated, to North America. Once back though, their reign of dominance over the North American region continued, with their eyes now set upon the next major LAN event, the Overwatch Open. Here, a group stage and playoff would determine a representative from both North America and Europe, who would then go head to head to claim the championship. Predictably, Envyus stormed through the NA competition with a perfect group stage and comfortable wins in the playoffs. They would now be put up against the European competition, this time in the form of Misfits, who would surprisingly beat out the European favourites Rogue on their side of the bracket. At this point the results seemed a foregone conclusion. Misfits were massive underdogs, and most assumed that Envyus would stroll to glory. But on October 1st, in a grand final Envyus was supposed to win, they fell apart, losing 3-1.
But Taimu, the counter, moving right in. Envyus literally fighting for their lives. The Graviton comes out, but the bomb from Soon! That's a triple kill for Misfits. 90 58% right now, X. If the Tracer is knocked off, Misfits will take it. They're almost there. They have done it. Misfits has won it all.
Without a doubt, Team Envyus were the best Overwatch team in North America, but no longer could they be described as the kings of Overwatch. Their 2 attempts at offline glory had ended with back-to-back defeats at the hands of European competition, and now the community labelled them chokers rather than considering them one of the best teams in the world. Team Envyus knew they needed a major LAN accomplishment on the international stage to redeem themselves after these 2 massive failures, and re-emphasise the success they'd achieved over the course of 2016 in the competitive Overwatch scene. This is when their attention turned to Apex Season 1. Apex, hosted by OGN in Korea, would be a 2-month-long tournament that aimed to bring the best players and teams in the game together, as a premier showcase of global Overwatch, beginning on October 7th, 2016. With a prize pool of roughly $177,000, Koreans rushed to sign up for the online qualifiers, which eventually saw over 1,500 players compete from around 230 teams, some more established in the scene like Lunatic High, and others cobbled together at the sign-up deadline like BK Stars.
Was the largest qualifier for any tournament in OGN history, and this goes back all the way through every single game. We're talking StarCraft Brood War, League of Legends, everything that they've done. More people attempted to get into this tournament, and we're down to the last 12 of those Korean teams at Apex, and rounding out with 4 teams coming in from the international scene in the West.
An offline qualifier would reduce the 64 teams who made it through the online qualifier to a final 12 that would then join the 4 invited giants from the Western scene in Apex Season 1. Whilst the high interest and participation was certainly an early positive, these qualifiers ended up attracting more attention for the wrong reasons, as it was revealed that players were prohibited from using 144Hz monitors, and instead were forced to play on 60Hz monitors in order to maintain an environment, quote, fair for everyone. Those who competed though instead pointed out that this ended up having an impact on players' mechanics and strategies, with accuracy decreasing and heroes like Genji becoming more powerful. Despite this controversy though, the 12 Korean teams that ended up qualifying for Apex Season 1 were Freaks Blue, BK Stars, Flash Lux, Kongdu Panthera, Kongdu Amphia, Lunatic High, LW Blue, Mighty Storm, MVP Space, Rhinos Gaming Titan, Runaway, and lastly, Combox T6, with some of the major teams missing out, being a Freaks Red, an LW Red side that included some names you're likely to recognise, such as Pine, Awesome Guy, and Flower, and also eHome, a former team of Giguri. The 4 Western teams, meanwhile, were split evenly between Europe and North America, with invites being handed to Rogue, Reunited, NRG, and obviously Team Envyus. One of the major talking points heading into Apex Season 1 was about how the Western teams would match up against those from Korea, with the 2 Overwatch scenes seeing very little overlap. This was set to change with the APAC Premier 2016, a LAN event taking place in Shanghai, China, that planned to pit the top teams from China, South Korea, Japan, and North America against one another in the first fully international Overwatch tournament, during the opening weeks of Apex at the beginning of October. Envyus was originally a part of these plans, having been invited alongside NRG from North America, but visa issues would end up preventing them from competing, with Rogue being invited to take their place. At first, it was South Korea's Lunatic High that got the best of Rogue at the APAC Premier, with 2 series wins over them in the group stage. When the 2 of them had their 3rd meeting in the Grand Final on October 16th, after Lunatic High bested NRG in the semis, it was Rogue on this occasion who claimed victory, with a statement 4-1 triumph.
This is it. Lunatic High are going to have one more fight. One more chance to stop this. They have the nano-boosted Reinhardt available to them. But look at the ults for Rogue. They've got a heck of a lot to work with here. Setup going to come now, and Vic looking to be in a good position to let a Dragon Strike go. There's the Graviton Surge. There's nothing you can do about this. Vic gets 5 kills over the fight. It's a pentakill, and it's Rogue. They're going to take the championship. They're taking the trophy. Our champions of the APAC Overwatch Premier are Rogue.
It's important to remember that whilst today we all herald South Korean players as the best in the game, heading into Apex back in 2016, there was actually more of a bias against Korean players, with an underlying assumption being that Korea was still behind the West when it came to FPS, an opinion even shared amongst Korean fans. So even though Lunatic High looked like Korea's best bet because of their impressive showing at the APAC Premier, many thought a team like Rogue simply outclassed most of the other Korean competition. In terms of the overall format for Apex Season 1, the 16 teams competing would be split between 4 groups, with each group drawing 1 Western team and 3 Korean teams. In a round-robin system, each team would play each other once, and the top 2 from each group would then advance to a single elimination playoff bracket. This would progress from the quarterfinals to the semi-finals and finally a grand final to determine the Apex Season 1 champion. Each series itself would be first to 3 map wins, with the exception of the final which would be first to 4. However, this is where I need to explain one major difference with Overwatch at this time compared to how it is now. Today, when you capture at least 33% of an assault point, or indeed the first point of a hybrid map, your progress is tracked and kept as a benchmark for your opponents to reach, should you then subsequently fail to capture that point fully before time expires. Back in 2016, however, it would not matter whether you failed to reach the 33% checkpoint, or even if your progress had got to around 99%, a failed point capture was taken as a binary result, with the opposing team needing to fully capture the point themselves to claim victory. If this sounds confusing, examples later on should make things clearer, but the important thing to note is that this led to a higher chance that these map types would be drawn, and when this happened in Apex Season 1, the map win would then be determined by the teams playing a sudden death best of 1 round on a control map. When the groups were finally announced, Team Envyus found themselves under the spotlight, having been placed in the same group as Lunatic High. The heavily anticipated clash was expected to decide the Group C winner, with the remaining members of their group, Combox T6 and Mighty Storm, not expected to really challenge. However, with Lunatic High away for the opening weeks of Apex whilst they competed in the APAC Premier, Envyus had to get business done against their other group opponents, and the first scheduled match was against Mighty Storm on the 14th of October. Mighty Storm hadn't started Apex the way they would have wanted, suffering a 3-0 opening series defeat to Combox T6, so Envyus was widely expected to pick up an easy win against them in this match. In terms of the meta being played, we can see the most common picks were Lucio, Zarya, and Ana, but heroes like Ryan and Reaper are also seeing a lot of playtime, and this was because many teams were using the Beyblade strategy, where they would nano boost and speed boost their Reaper as they used as Death Blossom. Other compositions seen in the Apex Season 1 group stage had teams also run heroes like Winston, Mei, and McCree, or indeed a triple DPS composition that utilised Tracer and Genji. The teams would start out in the pool, and despite a couple of early nerves being shown by the Envyus squad, it did not take them long to get comfortable and dominate this Mighty Storm side, but looked very much like an amateur team. First, Envyus took Village, running a Reaper Maze strat before switching to heroes like Roadhog, Tracer and McCree on Shrine, and it was clear that Taimu was in the mood.
Wait, is Taimu gonna die? That's like
Maybe,
the big question
probably
right
not.
now.
Doesn't look like it as Envyus holds this point, and that's it. They're going to 2-0 Nepal in style. Doesn't really, I think that's probably the most one-sided map we've seen yet in the tournament.
That was pretty ridiculous.
Kings Row would be map 2, and whilst to their credit Mighty Storm put up a valiant defence, it was very clear that they were completely outmatched compared to Envyus, who finished the map in good time after unlocking the first point with a Pharah from Tailspin. It was on Envyus' defence though where they really turned up the heat, with a solo heal triple tank composition, rounded out with Harry Hook on Soldier, that shut down Mighty Storm entirely, as Envyus quickly went up 2-0. While Skyer Industries looked set to be the third and final match, and Envyus continued to apply the pressure, quickly finishing the map, this time with a triple DPS dive composition that had Taimu, Harry Hook and Tailspin on Widow, Tracer and Genji, Coco on the Lucio, whilst Internet Hulk was on the solo tank on Winston. Mighty Storm were at least able to grab point A on their own attack, but that was the only positive that they were able to muster, as a return to Reaper and Roadhog easily prevented them from completing the map, handing Envyus a comfortable 3-0 opening series win that they were looking for. 3 days later, Envyus would return to the stage to face Combox T6 in what would probably be a more competitive series, but one where they were still overwhelmingly expected to win. Combox T6 were a promising Korean side, with many eyes being cast on their tank line, which included the now very recognisable names of Gamsu and Zumba. The first map again would be Nepal, but whereas Mighty Storm may have first caused Envyus some issues, the same could not be said for Combox T6, who despite the occasional good play from Gansu's Rhine or Zumba Zarya, continually was shut down in the face of Reaper Mei and Roadhog being played by Taimu and Tailspin, as Envyus strolled to a 1-0 lead without losing the control point once. Icavold would see Envyus stay in the driver's seat, with Taimu's Reaper propelling his side to complete the map with over a minute still left in the time bank. Combox T6 was certainly looking a lot better and more coordinated compared to the first map, but whenever they won team fights, they were never really able to keep up their momentum. This showed on their own attack, as they actually reached the final section of the map, thereby winning more points against Envyus than even Mighty Storm had managed in their entire series. But it was at this point that Taimu and the company were able to set up a nasty defensive hold at the castle gate, and with a final Death Blossom, Envyus took the map and thus went up 2-0 in the series. It appeared that this match would be following a similar script to the one just 3 days before, with Envyus looking likely to go 3-0 up, as the teams would now play on Volskaya Industries. This seemed even more likely after they took point A with 7 minutes still left in their time bank, with a triple DPS setup. But then, it appeared that they stayed on it for too long, as their attacks on point B became a little disjointed, all the while Combox T6 repelled them, with their Tracer player Liz doing a lot of damage. Surprisingly, time would expire on them before they could finish the map, opening the door for Combox T6 to perhaps win the map from Envyus. They would break past point A in good time on their own attack, and then again, behind the play of Liz, they were able to finally stop an Envyus stall on point B that saw them win the map 2-1, that also changed the series score to 2-1. Certainly a bit of a shock, but ultimately one caused by Envyus' own mistakes. They would now head into Dorado on match point, and whilst Envyus certainly stuck to their more refined Reaper compositions, which helped them finish the map, Combox T6 looked full of confidence and gave Envyus a real scare, with an attack of their own that, like Eichenwald, almost reached the finish, with a time move Death Blossom again being the final deciding factor that got his team over the line to win this match 3-1.
All right, Taimu comes in with the Death Blossom, and that's exactly what Envyus needs to close out Dorado and close out this series. Doesn't look like T6 is going to be able to push it the rest of the way. Liz goes into the Pulse Bomb, catches nobody, and Envyus with the hold. There's the overtime now, but it is running out, and Envyus going down on the third map, but they will take the match with a 3-1 victory.
That was, I think, a little close for comfort if you looked at Internet Hulk's face right as that game ended.
Yeah.
There was just a sense that whilst Envy still looked like a really strong team, something wasn't clicking together, with the side at times looking genuinely vulnerable and having to be bailed out by individual plays, rather than those created as a team. Despite this, people expected them to bring their A-game to their last group stage match, against Lunatic High 4 days later, with a top spot in the group likely being the prize of the team victorious. Nepal as the opening map seemed to suggest that we were in for a very exciting series, as the teams went back and forth early on, primarily behind the play of their DPS players. It was Lunatic High though that first seemed to have the edge, with Esker, Lee Taejun, and Ryu Jae-hong having the biggest impact as they confidently took the first round on Shrine, and then just edged out the second on Village to go 1-0 up in the series. The second map, Numbani though, would see Envyus fight back with an early Nanoblade onto Tailspin, allowing them to take the first point. But during the second section, a fantastic defensive hold from Lunatic High, culminating in a deadly Shatter Deadeye combo from Miro and Esker, ended Envyus' attack, and seemed to take away the momentum they were trying to build. One of Envyus' strengths, however, which should have been noticeable up to now, was their flexibility, and this would prove to be the difference maker on their defence. Tailspin brought out a Junkrat to spam the corridors, whilst Harry Hook continually switched back and forth between a Tracer and Soldier. This made things difficult for Lunatic High, who struggled to find a composition that could break through this setup, so even though their own attack hadn't been great, Envyus responded brilliantly, and impressively full held to level up the series, now at 1-1. Temple of Anubis would be the next crucial map. Again, momentum ebbed back and forth between the two sides, with the first point being captured by both. Despite initially throwing away what seemed to be their point B cap, Lunatic High did in the end manage to finish the map, but when Envyus found themselves wiping Lunatic High on the second point, with a map completion in their grasp, they could not finish the job, with Miro leading an almost unbelievable stall that almost guaranteed his side the map win, as Lunatic High went 2-1 up in this great match. With the series now at match point, Envyus would need to win the next map on Dorado to keep their hopes alive. And this time Lunatic High were known for having a little bit of a problem countering Pharah, so Envyus started out by having Tailspin use her to pincer the Korean side, alongside a flanking Taimu Reaper, and at first this seemed to work out rather well. Unfortunately for Envyus, like earlier on Numbani, the rest of their payload offense eventually stalled out at the hands of Esker's McCree, as once again there seemed to be a hint of incoordination from Envyus, with a Reaper strat that just didn't seem to work. Envyus did put up a great effort to try and salvage the match, but eventually the ult economy told, with Lunatic High getting themselves over the line to win the map and thus the series 3-1, all but guaranteeing them first place in the group, with Envy pretty much assured second.
Tailspin is somehow in the back, or
That's a Miro's
that's
behind
Miro.
them,
How did he
actually,
get
yeah.
behind him right there?
Does it well. I mean, he was able to cut through the bank, it looks like, I think. And they may be able to do it right here. Deadeye looking for it. He's got a Reinhardt in the face. Eska needs to be careful, and they're going to take it. Lunatic High with the 3-1 victory over Envyus.
Wow, huge right there. And that means Envy may not take first place in the groups.
Following this match on October 21st, Apex had a 2-week break in the group stage schedule, as many players travelled to BlizzCon for the first ever Overwatch World Cup, which was running from the 29th of October to the 5th of November, with Apex starting back up again on the 9th. With the APAC premiere and now the start of Apex, global attention was certainly being drawn to the Korean region, and it was at the World Cup where they really started to become both respected and feared. South Korea went through the entire tournament undefeated and made a statement in the final where they defeated Russia 4-0. But perhaps their best moment came in their quarter-final against the USA, where Zumba pulled off perhaps the most famous play in competitive Overwatch history, even to this day.
Hog from Roadhog, and they just melted through that overshield and managed to pick up the kills anyway.
South Korea has swapped Eska over to the Reaper now, which I think is a good change. The Reaper generally doing a little bit better in this third part.
And wow, Graviton Surgeon Zumba goes in. Big aggressive move by South Korea. Will it pay off though? Looks like it is so far. Kills coming in. There's the Dragon Blade, the nano boost on Arhan, and they absolutely wreck USA.
Returning to Apex, Lunatic High predictably won their last 2 matches to top Group C, with Envy advancing to the playoffs from a 2nd place finish. When the group stage matches ended on November 16th, we learned which 8 teams would be heading into the playoffs. Rogue, BK Stars, Lunatic High and Reunited as first seeds, and a Freaks Blue, Kong Duumphia, Team Envyus, and lastly LW Blue as the second seeds. In terms of the playoff format, the first seeds would get to pick their quarter-final opponents, with the order of picks being decided by random choice. While certainly questions remained about whether Envyus could be considered alongside Lunatic High and Rogue in terms of being called the best team in the world, ultimately, most still saw them as a very scary team, and as such most expected them to be the last ones picked by the group first seeds. The random order saw Lunatic High pick first, followed by BK Stars, then Rogue and Reunited drawing the short straw, and being last. Predictably, Envyus was avoided as Lunatic High selected Kong Duumphia, and BK Stars chose LW Blue. But then it came to Rogue, being represented at this process by AKM.
So let's choose your group first.
자, 로그가 가장 먼저 할까요? 아니면 C? 조금 더 안전하게 C 그룹으로 가네요. 예, 예.
바로
그냥 붙여버려요? 엔비어스를!
Oh my goodness. This happened. This is happening. Rogue versus Envy.
So despite the fact that Envy is considered to be #1 team in the world at the moment, why did you pick Envy?
They were only #1 in NA.
북미에서만 1위지 세계 1등은 아니라고 합니다.
와! 잠깐만요. 자, 타이머.
얘기 들어봐야 돼.
타이머. 자, 물어봐 주십시오.
So time, a shot was fired for you. Any reactions to this?
Nah. I'm like, to be completely honest, that statement is completely true. So I would consider ourselves the top 3 team in the world, with Rogue first and then Lunatic High. And I'm actually, like, I don't really mind that we're gonna face Rogue in quarterfinals because we're gonna have to play against them anyway later in the tournament. So it's like we just have to beat anybody or everybody anyway.
So you still had a choice. You could have chosen Africa Freaks Blue. You could have chosen a Korean team. Why did you pick Envyus? Why did you pick Envyus?
Because I know they have a lot of problem with practicing recently, and they have to play on Monday. So it's more practice for us to learn the new meta, and it's all to have an advantage because I know they have some visa problems and they can't really practice nowadays.
If it wasn't already apparent, this decision by Rogue to select Envyus was shocking, and in normal circumstances wouldn't make much sense. There was something odd about it all though. Timmy certainly looked, if not nervous, at least unenthusiastic. But then there was also AKM's comment regarding Envyus struggling with a lack of practice and visa problems. It seemed to suggest he knew something most of us did not. Later that day we'd all learn the truth, that Team Envyus DPS player Tailspin had left the team.
In Overwatch news, Tailspin has left our roster to pursue opportunities outside of gaming. We wish him all the best. Now we're searching for a suitable DPS replacement for Korea and beyond. We continue on in the OGN Overwatch Round of 8 on Monday, November 21st.
But whilst the team suggested that Tailspin had left to, quote, pursue opportunities outside gaming, Tailspin himself would put out a tweet longer but seemed to suggest otherwise. Key things he noted was that he wasn't happy being on the team. He would not be quitting Overwatch as the team seemed to be suggesting. But most critically, he felt like the effort he put into the team wasn't being matched by certain people. And from looking at the individual comments he left for his teammates, Tailspin made it rather clear who he was singling out specifically. For Team Envyus itself though, this was a crisis. This internal turmoil may have been able to explain some of their recent issues, but the bigger problem for them now was actually being able to field a team for their quarterfinal, scheduled in just 5 days' time. Adding insult to injury was the fact they'd been placed on the same side of the playoff bracket as Lunatic High, and at this point, Envyus was written off by most of the serious challengers, with almost unanimous opinion being that Rogue would comfortably beat them. All hope seemed lost, but in Envyus' darkest hour, upset their captain and leader, Internet Hulk.
Dennis came to me at the time as kind of the captain of our team, and he said, Mike, I met this guy at the World Cup. He plays for Thailand. His name is Mickey. He's got this amazing attitude, and he's really skilled, and he's a really great diva player, and we really want to get him put on the team. And I had no idea who he was, and Dennis, I'll never forget, just said, trust me, Mike, trust me. This is the guy we need. He can be really good, and he has an amazing attitude. He's going to be really good for our team. Just trust me.
Mickey, now coming in as an emergency substitute, was thrust into the starting lineup, With his strengths being at the off-tank position, Team Envyus' current positions would need to be completely overhauled. Coco and Chips Heim would remain at their main tank and support positions, but with Mickey coming now in at off-tank, Internet Hulk would now transition to support, whilst Harry Hook took up a more permanent hitscan DPS role, and lastly Timey would more regularly fulfill their flex DPS requirements. However, all of his position moves, only 4 days of practice together, and the basic unknowns of Mickey as a player, coming from a previous team by the name of Weed Time, did little to improve optimism among analysts. If anything, the only question mark heading into their series against Rogue was about how the two teams would adapt to the new method that was being introduced to both sides at the bracket stage, that seemed buffs to heroes like D.Va and Soldier. Remembering the situation when these two teams last played one another, it was now fascinating to see how the roles were now reversed. Rogue was now the best team in the world, favourites for Apex, and on a very strong run of form. Envyus meanwhile were the big underdogs in this matchup, as they tried to bounce back from their post-group stage internal chaos. Map 1 would see the teams take to Ilios, and initially it looked like the pre-match predictions were coming true, as Rogue dominated the opening round on Ruins. Tvik was in the conversation as perhaps the best DPS player in the world at this time, and it was both his Soldier play alongside AKM's Tracer that stole the show, closing out the first point 100-0. Envyus would start to fight back on well, but as it neared its finish, a lack of communication and coordination saw Envyus trickle onto the point, rather than grouping up, which spelled disaster, and gave Rogue the Map 1 win.
Rogue gets the point back just in time. Tvik, that Soldier, of course, getting closer to the ultimate.
I really think Envy should have just backed off right there, Doe. I think by filing in one by one, they gave a lot of ult charge over, and now like the ult charge is just getting farmed up here, and there you go.
Yeah, the desperation is real. Tvik gets that nano boost on him, going to be able to take out Internet Hulk and anyone else who decides to come to the point, and Rogue will be able to take Ilios 2-0.
Wow, I think the end there could have been shot called a little bit more smoothly by Envy.
Heading into Envyus' pick of King's Row for map 2, Rogue decided to try and catch their opponents out with a 5-tank composition. It's fair to say it didn't work. Worse for Rogue though, was that even after switching back onto their more familiar DPS heroes of Tracer and Soldier, they still couldn't find a way to stop Envyus' momentum. Interestingly, whilst Tvik was being incredibly impactful on the Soldier, it was becoming apparent that Mickey was clearly trying to target him and keep him preoccupied on the D.Va, a strategy that appeared to be working, with Envyus managing to finish the map with over 3 minutes to win the time bank. Rogue's reply at first was quite strong, with a Pharah and Genji composition. When they reached the last section, they began to get stalled, but only being because of Mickey being killed, that Tvik finally managed to get off a nano visor that got Rogue over the line in overtime. Envyus now had 3 minutes to capture the first point and claim back victory, but in a strange sequence of events, probably due to the new dynamics of the squad, it looked very disjointed and unorganised, which allowed Rogue to impressively full hold, taking us to one of those sudden death control maps I mentioned earlier.
Be going onto the Reaper now in a bit of desperation. They've got an Earth Shatter.
Yeah, they gotta use it too. Wind's getting very, very low. Graviton Surge comes in. There's a whole hog. Coco with the kill into Winds. Harry Hook trying to get as much as he can done, and Coco gets a couple himself. It's overtime, but Envy is still pushing. Oh, but no, everybody going down as AKM responds big time with the Roadhog. And Rogue able to full hold here on King's Row, it looks like. Yep, there goes the overtime bar. Tracer coming in. He keeps it alive for just a moment, but that's it. And Rogue will full hold. Wow. Can't believe they were able to do that.
Impressive stuff, but
yeah,
coordination simply not sterling there from Envy.
This ended up being Control Center on Lijiang Tower, and at first it was Rogue who took the initiative, with Reinforce executing a number of excellent engages on Winston, which were followed up well by AKM's Tracer. Eventually though, Envyus took the point, and once they did, they didn't let it up. A final throw of the dice for Rogue was shut down almost straight away, as Mickey counter-engaged a diving Reinforce, which forced him off the map, leading to Envyus winning the teamfight and thus his control round, earning them the King's Row victory, which held the series at 1-1.
Tvik though connecting with that sword as he gets a kill. Rogue though losing too many people, and Envyus with the overtime, they may be able to win King's Row if they can win this point. Tvik with just 0 health. Well, I was gonna say 15, but now he's got 0 health. And Envyus, they've held, man. They're gonna take King's Row, and we have a tie series.
That time though, great use. They opened up with the McCree ultimate to zone them off, but Mickey really the hero, just knocking the Winston straight off. Didn't have the jump back as he had used it to get up onto the high ground over the point there where the McCree was.
Apex up to now had shown, however, that assault maps were not Envyus' strong suit, and heading into Hanamura, Rogue was still strongly favoured. They blitzed through point A, but then became stuck at point B, with Timey's Roadhog dealing a ton of damage to reinforce his shield, which then allowed him to keep pressuring with hooks. To the shock of most in the end, Rogue were full held, opening the door to Envyus. They took point A and at times looked set to win the map, but just like on King's Row, they eventually let things slip, with Rogue putting up an impressive defensive stand that allowed them to full hold point B. sending us to our second consecutive sudden death scenario.
Keeping people up, Taimu tries the Death Blossom, nothing doing in AKM with enough kills to maybe give Rogue the hold here. Trying to stay on the point, Diva ultimate now for Rogue, and that is it, they will hold. I don't think Envyus is going to get back there in time, they won't, and we're going to another tiebreaker.
On Control Center again, the two sides tussled closely as the point flipped cans consistently. In the end, it headed towards a final teamfight at 99 to 99%. This time though, Tvik had a nano visor, which wiped out Envyus, winning Rogue the tiebreaker, and thus a Hanamura map win.
And it's a tactical visor. And now, back into overtime, this time for Rogue, and the kills are coming in. Envyus, that sound barrier was so late, nobody was alive. And Tvik with the super hard carry, I think he got all 6 at the end there, and Rogue takes the tiebreaker and takes Hanamura.
They needed that, Doa.
They
Rogue
really did.
Needed that.
The match was clearly on a knife edge. Both sides were largely running mirror matchups into one another at this point, with the duel between Tvik and Mickey largely dictating the success on either side. Gibraltar would be the 4th map, and yet again Envyus' attack struggled, labouring to only the end of the 2nd section, as Tvik rained terror down from the high ground. At this stage, it looked like a knockout blow had perhaps been dealt. Envyus had played magnificently, but Rogue would surely be able to get over the line now. They could not. Envyus needed heroic defense, and Internet Hulk led the line. Moving on to the Winston, he controlled the high ground above the first checkpoint, and along with Taimu, shut down Rogue's last hope of a Tvik Genji blade to full hold the first section, win the map, and tie the series at 2-2.
He was ready for that Genji. They were so ready, and that's the push, just stuff for Rogue. Unko though saving that nano boost for now. Internet Hulk with the kills, and Envyus. Oh, that's only a couple seconds left. They might be able to take this map. Can they get to the payload? There's the overtime. Maybe Rogue can do it, but no, they've lost too many people. Envyus might be able to hold here. Mickey charging forward. There goes overtime. Hard to see with the sun in my eyes, but that's it. Envyus actually takes Watchpoint Gibraltar.
Wow, Doa.
Eichenwald would decide it all as the 5th map. Rogue would attack first this time and initially struggle against Envyus' stout defense, with Harry Hook containing their Pharaoh with his soldier on the high ground. Eventually they would get the payload moving, but all the momentum in this 2nd section went the way of Envyus, especially after a huge Diva bomb from Mickey. With time expiring, it looked like Rogue were about to advance to the 3rd section of the map, but a last second re-engage from Mickey's Diva bomb created space, allowing Envyus from what was a 5v6 situation to turn the fight around and incredibly stop Rogue at the end of the bridge. Envyus would take the first point quickly on their own attack, piling further pressure onto Rogue, and eventually it would be a combination of Coco and Mickey's ultimates that would determine the outcome of this series.
Has to go raid for him here. Envyus still pushing this payload for the moment. It is contested though.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, reinforced very, very low. Mickey gets a kill into Unko in the back lines, wins, goes ahead, comes in, pops that Graviton Surge. Envyus push back for the moment.
Yeah, Mickey gonna go ahead and get desuited and die, but they haven't done anything about Harry or Taimu, who are just running around the periphery that entire fight, picking up all of the kills.
Yeah.
And Rogue dumped a lot of ults into that Doa. They dumped a lot.
Yes, they did.
The Graviton Surge not effective. Mickey getting scarily close to another self-destruct here, and that's a problem because it's just a tool to keep the payload moving, right? And when you have this much time and you don't have to push it very far, it gets concerning, and Harry Hook has found an angle.
Yeah, well, he's going to dive off as soon as he's spotted here. Has to play it safe, does not want to die here. As Envyus pushing to win this match. And the sound barrier not used yet. Nox doesn't have it. Mickey gets another 3!
Huge.
Are you kidding me? How does he do it? How does he do it with this Diva?
Wow, they just keep separating the Reinhardt. There's no Reinhardt shield. Tvik just gets his entire tac visor eaten by the defense matrix. And now Harry, he's setting up. He's going to try and push this. Rogue has to go in right now.
Okay, sound barrier comes in. Harry Hook drops down. He gets left. He could be in trouble here.
Death Blossom.
Backs back up. There's a Death Blossom, and it could be the death of Rogue in this tournament. They do get a few kills, but is it enough? Harry Hook, that nano boosted Diva not standing up to him, and Rogue losing everyone. There's a payload, and Envyus, they will win this match and go to the semifinals. Are you kidding me?
What a stunning upset for Envy Doa.
Wow.
Amazing that they could come in here and take this series, went all 5 games, and it certainly delivered, but man, Mickey's Diva at the end there, the huge self-destruct kills, incredible stuff, and Envy, wow, just, what do you say? That's a heartbreaker for Rogue for sure.
Really
they picked
is.
Envy. They said, we know you're having those visa problems. We know you're number 1 in an A, but it's not going to mean much here, and Rogue will fall in quarters.
An amazing win, an amazing series. Envyus had fought back from what could have been pre-match disaster to pull off one of the upsets of a tournament. This match meant so much more than just Apex progression though. It was Envyus' redemption for their last 2 LAN event losses at the hands of European competition. And this time, they were getting their own back as underdogs, against the favourites, against the best team in the world. Sure, the meta couldn't have landed any more favourably in their lap, but by overcoming their old enemies, Envyus turned a corner and could push on with a weight lifted off their shoulders. They still had one more job to do though, go on and pick up the LAN victory they so desperately coveted. In the semis they would be thought of as underdogs again, facing a Kongdu Amphiya side with players like Panker and Birdring, that had just beaten Lunatic High and were now seen as one of the best Korean teams in this new meta. Both teams battled hard, with the series swinging back and forth, but with Mickey as their new smiling glue that kept Envyus gelled together, there could only be one result.
Kongdu Unsia's tournament relies on the overtime on this payload. Are they just going to let it push?
And guess what? Mickey has self-destruct, so it gets even harder, Doa. Fatal's
right.
going to have his suit back up in just a
There's
second,
the
but there's the
self-destruct.
self-destruct. Everybody going to back
Gets
off.
nothing, and now Kongdu. Oh, it's a big earth shatter! Nobody gets to the point! Envyus are going to the grand finals. Coco with the go-ahead earth shatter to send them there.
Then came the Apex Season 1 finals. The great irony now being that due to the other side of the bracket being rather weak, they were now for once seen as favourites. Their victory would be a brilliant team effort, from the quiet but always consistent players like Coco and Chips, to the charismatic duo of Harry Hook and Mickey, who himself picked up the Apex MVP. And of course not forgetting the finals MVP himself, Taimu. The old Envyus may have succumbed to their former demons and crumbled, having been in similar positions twice before, but not this new Envyus. And that was because they were led and moulded by their captain, Internet Hulk. Against a Freak of Freaks Blue on December 3rd, Envyus would be the one to write their history and complete their redemption.
Envyus should have no trouble at all pushing the payload. Man, the picks into the team fight win, and that is it. Envyus will win Intel Overwatch Apex Season 1 with a 4-0 victory. GG.
Wow, huge win from Envyus. Look at these guys coming through this tournament. Everybody thought it was over when Tailspin left.
Yeah.
That was going to be it. Mickey comes in as an emergency substitute onto this team, and he helps the team go all the way to a clean sweep of a Korean Grand Final.
Well, I mean, what can you say? The addition of Mickey, the roster swaps, the position swaps, everything came together for these guys. It was a perfect storm of talent, of meta, and Envyus dashing towards that trophy. And man, have they earned it, especially in this postseason.
Wow, what an amazing story. Taimu gets there first, but congratulations to Envy on an unexpected win. They had to go through Rogue. They were the underdogs. They had to go through Kongdu Unsia. They were the underdogs, and here they stand as champions.
Absolutely beautiful. You see Tasmo, their manager, on the left as well, been taking care of these guys as they've been in Korea now for about 2 months. It's a long time to be away from home, but it sure feels good to come home with that trophy.
Wonderful stuff from Envy.